I heard a sound that stayed with me forever.
Long fingernails scraping the glass of my window over and over again. I wanted to think it was just a nightmare. But the next day, the neighbor told my mom that she had seen a shadow, a silhouette on our roof at my window, and that it had terrified her. Everyone, thank you for welcoming us back once again. I feel very happy, very glad to be able to share with you the following stories of encounters with the paranormal. I hope you enjoy them. And if you relate to any of them, if any of them make you feel particularly nervous, don't hesitate to comment. And please don't psych yourselves out. Don't become more perceptive than usual. Or you might end up being the protagonists of the next episode. You are listening to Relatos de la Noche. Hello Uriel, good evening, and a big greeting to the whole Relatos community if this story ends up being included. My name is Ani. I live in a small town in Veracruz called Vega de la Torre. Honestly, it was really hard for me to get the courage to write to you, but after spending several days listening to the podcast while doing homework, seeing how the community has grown, and how so many people are encouraged to share their experiences, I felt that I should do it too. Imagine growing up having to get used to things without explanation. This has been happening to me since I was about 5 years old. I've always lived with my parents and older brother. My first encounter with this kind of thing happened when I was very little. I was playing alone in my backyard, as I usually did, while my mom was in the kitchen. Everything seemed normal until I had that clear feeling of not being alone. When I looked up, I saw a tall woman with very dark, long hair. Her skin had a very strange greenish tone. Her clothes looked like she'd just come out of the water. I couldn't see her face clearly, but I remember the fear I felt at that moment. I screamed and ran to my mom, asking her for her rosary. I knew that was used when we were scared. She tried to calm me down, without really understanding what had happened. The worst part is it didn't happen just once. I saw her 3 more times. She never got very close. She just appeared, as if she was watching. When my parents became concerned about my behavior, they made the wise decision to bless the house. And from then on, everything went back to normal for a while. Here I want to emphasize something important. Back then, we had a neighbor who was said to practice witchcraft. We never interacted with her, but the side of the house that bordered hers always felt different. There was an extremely uncomfortable feeling there. Years went by and I grew up without any more manifestations until eventually they returned. This time they weren't as visible, nothing like that first encounter, but they were more constant. My mom started to feel things too. Breathing near her neck, the feeling of someone behind her, noises that had no explanation. They tried to hide it so I wouldn't get scared, but little by little it all caught up with me again. Sounds started coming from my old room. Someone was crying softly, but very close to the window. The sounds were so real, so clear, that I couldn't stand them for long, and I ended up using that room just to store my things. The house was blessed several more times. We are believers, and that gave us some peace of mind, but that feeling never lasted long. I remember one early morning, around 2 o'clock, when I was alone in the house with headphones on. Even though I didn't quite hear it, I had the feeling that someone spoke to me. Have you ever heard someone talking to you even though you had headphones on with the volume turned way up? You haven't felt it, Well, I felt that. I turned around and the only thing I saw was a figure going up the stairs, entering my parents' room. A figure I recognized, wearing a soaked dress. My dad also started experiencing things. He felt like someone was sitting on his bed. Touches, noises, presences. Over time, sadly, he also started to get used to it. Recently, I adopted a kitten named Calcifer. He had been abandoned. Since he arrived, I felt calmer, as if his presence helped me feel safe, as if he pushed away whatever was haunting me. But about a month ago, the most intense thing happened. That night, I was in my old room doing homework, with Calcifer by my side. I began to feel a clear sense of unease, as if someone was standing at the door watching me. Calcifer wouldn't leave my side. I left my homework and stepped out of the room. Before the bathroom, there's a small room where we have a shelf with a Bible, images of saints, and a devotional candle that is always lit. I went to the bathroom with the door open. Calcifer stayed close by. That's where something happened that can't be explained. Whew. The candle went out. I heard someone blow it out. And when I turned to the darkness, I felt the flowers hit me in the face, as if someone had thrown them at me. Calcifer screamed, going on alert. I didn't know what to do. I felt nauseous, dizzy, and very afraid. I ran to my mom and ended up vomiting from the shock. Since that day, I try to pray every night, but I still feel like something remains here. Something is still very close. We try not to think about it too much, because the more attention we give it, the more present the manifestations feel. I avoid staying up late, but even so, just leaving my room at night makes me feel scared. It seems that sadly, we've learned to live with the unknown. And maybe things don't happen as often as before, but they always come back. I feel like this follows me even outside the house, as if it didn't just stay here. Not anymore. I just hope that someday it ends. Thank you for reading my story. If you decide to share it, I would really appreciate it. I will follow any advice the community decides to give me. Thank you, best regards, Yuri. I love Relatos de la Noche even though I'm the protagonist of my own story. Good evening. Good evening, community. I prefer to keep my name anonymous. I hope that doesn't hurt my credibility, but you'll understand soon. I'm from Torreon, Coahuila. This happened several years ago, but there are nights when I still go back there. I grew up in a stable, well-off family. We never lacked anything. We lived well, not with excessive luxuries, but without worries. All of that fell apart in a very short time. And it happened so quickly that even today it's hard for me to organize the memories from that time. I had with a woman for several years. When everything came to light, the relationship ended, but our family was left in pieces. Eri tried to fix things, apologized, and over time we decided to move on. We thought that was the end of it. We thought it was over. We thought we were over it, but we weren't. The woman promised to take revenge on my father and on us, but luckily she disappeared from our lives. However, the moment dragged on due to everything that followed. First came the financial hit. My dad had a legal dispute and made bad decisions, which led to forced sales. We lost properties, vehicles, things that had been in the family for years. We ended up selling the house where I grew up and moved to a new social housing unit in the eastern part of the city, in an area that was just starting to be populated. The house was practically alone in the middle of empty lots. It didn't have any security bars or fences, not even mosquito screens on the windows. We got there in a hurry, more worried about surviving than about feeling safe. And then the illnesses started. My mom was the first one. She lost weight alarmingly. She didn't sleep. The little she ate made her feel sick. She lost strength. She spent her days sitting on the bed as if her body no longer responded. Then it was my dad, a strong, burly man whom I had never seen sick. It started the same way. No appetite, no rest, fading away little by little. I was the youngest and the only one still living with them. I slept in a room upstairs. I started having severe intestinal problems. I couldn't eat anything. The doctors talked about infections, but the treatments didn't work and everything kept getting worse. The nights became the worst part. I barely slept. When I did, I would wake up drenched in sweat, with a fever, trapped in nightmares that always felt too similar to each other. In them, I heard a sound that stayed with me forever. Nails. Long nails scraping on glass over and over again. A noise that came right from my bedroom window. It wasn't a loud sound, but it was persistent, constant, and maddening. One day, a neighbor out back told my mom that at night they had seen shadows moving on our roof. Sometimes, she said, they were in the yard too, like they were peering in through my window. My mom didn't want to make a big deal out of it, but I started to fear the night even more. One of those early mornings, the fever had me almost out of my mind. The window was open. We didn't have any protection. I complained, I talked in my sleep, I moved, I was out of control. In the dream, I felt like something was holding my arms. It hurt, like they were marking my skin. I saw a figure above me. A woman or something. Something that wasn't quite human. My screams of pain woke up my mom. When she ran upstairs to the room, she opened the door and froze. There was something on top of me. A creature with wings. To this day, my mom still swears it happened. But it wasn't really a bird. It was something that seemed to have human-like arms. It was the size of a person. Its claws were gripping me tightly. My mom always said that the first thing she saw were the eyes. Human eyes on that animal-like face. And that at that moment she understood she wasn't dreaming. She couldn't scream. She couldn't move. The only thing that came out of her mouth were prayers. I woke up just when I felt the rush of air, as if something had flown out the window. I remember my mom's words, the sound of flapping wings fading into the night, and nothing else. We called my uncles who are evangelicals. They arrived at dawn and started praying for us and for the house. During those prayers, I vomited something yellow and bitter. Something that felt unlike anything I'd experienced before. After that, little by little, things started to change. We started going to church. For some reason, the illnesses went away. The house became quieter at night. I no longer heard anything at the window. But you know what? Weeks later, my dad confessed something to us. He said he knew where it had all come from, that the woman he had been with years ago had looked for him, that she spoke to him about punishments, losses, and sickness that were coming our way, that she would make sure we experienced them. But he also told us that this woman recently called him again, just to say that she couldn't go on anymore, that something had gotten out of her hands. We never found out exactly what was in my room that night. We never saw anything like it again. I hope I didn't bore you with this story. Greetings to the community. Greetings from the Lagunera region, where there are many Laguneros happy with your stories. I hope you're enjoying this episode. Community, I've really enjoyed the stories, but your opinion is always the most important. So leave us your comments. I also want to thank you because it's already sold out in so many bookstores. The Book of Night Stories, thank you so much. Seriously, on Amazon, for example, it's still one of the 5 best-selling horror books. It hasn't left that spot since it went on sale back in the distant year of 2023. Thanks to you for that, as well as for all the good things happening with this project. We continue with more stories tonight, che. Very good evening. My name is Armando, and I would like to share with you an experience I had with my family that still has consequences in our lives to this day. This is a true story, told from my personal experience. I don't know if what we experienced was witchcraft, suggestion, or something we just couldn't explain, but I witnessed it from beginning to end, and it happened inside my own house. I decided to keep writing to you because I believe that Night Stories is the right place for this kind of experience. Long, uncomfortable stories that don't necessarily have a clear explanation. For a long time, I doubted whether I should tell this story, because I don't really know how to explain it or what actually happened. The only thing I know is that it happened, that I saw it with my own eyes, and that even today it still has consequences for my family. It all started in a very normal way, like so many problems do, with an argument between neighbors. At that time, a new family moved into the area where we lived. They had 2 children, a young man between 18 and 20 years old, and a young woman about 16 or 17. The son used to play soccer with other young men in a small square surrounded by houses. The problem was that they played carelessly. On one occasion, the boy kicked the ball so hard that it hit a pole, then a transformer, and caused a blackout. As a result, my computer at home got burned out. Several neighbors who were also affected came out to complain to them, since it wasn't the first time they had been asked to be careful. My mom has always been a very tough person, someone who defends what's hers, and from that moment on she took a strong dislike to this family. They were difficult people. The lady had very strange behaviors. She was aggressive, foul-mouthed, and gave off a heavy vibe. The man, her partner, was a tall, bold man who seemed to fulfill her every whim. Although the blackout problem didn't escalate, my family was left with a strong resentment toward them, especially because of their indifferent attitude, as if they didn't care about the damage they had caused. But the real problem began months later. One day, as I was leaving my house, the family's daughter ran over and pushed my mom, knocking her down. My mom is a very thin person with fragile bones, and she got badly hurt. When we confronted her, telling her to be careful, the girl responded rudely, saying that it was a public street. That made my mom angry, and on impulse, she slapped her. I want to be clear, I don't justify this. She was a minor, but it was a reaction caused by pain and a moment of desperation after so long. And from that point on, the situation became unbearable. For more than a year, the lady started insulting my mom and our family almost every day. I was surprised how my mom, being strong-willed, held herself back to avoid bigger problems. Later, we were forced to move because they raised the rent. The day my parents were taking our things out, the lady came out of her house. How? And she started yelling an incredible amount of insults at us, celebrating that we were leaving. She even started bringing up very sensitive topics for us, saying things about my dad. And at that moment, after more than a year of putting up with it, my mom finally responded. She asked her what her problem was, why she was so determined to insult us. I remember that at that moment, the lady quickly came down the stairs of her house and got up close to my parents, yelling at them face to face. I clearly remember how her eyes seemed to shine, as if she had been waiting for that moment. When my mom decided to leave, the lady shouted, "My skinny lady is going to take care of you." She was referring to Santa Muerte, of whom she was very devoted. I want to clarify that I don't intend to offend any beliefs. I have nothing against any of them. I'm just telling what happened, what was said. Months after that incident, my mom started to feel a very strong pain in her stomach for no apparent reason. At first, she could live with it, but over time it became unbearable. There were times when she ended up in the emergency room. They ran all kinds of tests on her and found nothing. Some doctors even implied that she just wanted attention. For my sister and me, it was heartbreaking to see her suffer and not be able to do anything. Her stomach would swell up in a very strange way, as if something was moving inside her. When my parents saw that no one at the hospital could help them, my grandmother told them they could go to a monastery near the city, known for helping in very difficult and very private cases. When they arrived, a monk greeted them and took them to another, more experienced one, the one who handled these kinds of things. After listening to everything, the monk told them bluntly, "What is happening to you really looks like witchcraft." That answer seemed very strange to us, especially coming from someone from the church. But not only did he seem to believe in it, he even recommended looking for a priest from another religion who could help them. My dad tried to contact him for months, but something always happened, and meanwhile my mom got worse. She became aggressive, cold, and at certain moments it seemed like she didn't recognize us anymore. She said very hurtful things, and that seriously damaged our family, my parents' marriage. One October night, something happened that I'll never forget. I was woken up by my mom's cries of pain. When I went downstairs, I saw her writhing in bed while my dad held her hand. It was around 11:30 at night, but when midnight struck, everything got worse. Her body arched in a horrible way. Her stomach started to swell more and more. I went for a bottle of specially prepared holy water they'd given us at the monastery and started praying while I sprinkled it on her. My mom was begging my dad to get me out of the room, saying that I shouldn't be there. I didn't listen. I was 14 years old and I felt like I had to help. There was a moment when her stomach started moving from the inside, like when a baby kicks, but in a much more violent way. I searched online for the Magnificat prayer and started to recite it, making the sign of the cross with water on her forehead. My dad left the room for a moment and I was left alone with her. Her back arched so much that it looked like she was about to levitate. I swear to you. After a few minutes, everything calmed down. My mom collapsed from exhaustion. She fell asleep. For a few weeks, everything got better. The pain and aggressive behavior decreased, but over time they returned, although with less intensity. To this day, 4 years later, there are still moments when it happens again. We were never able to find the priest. My mom says that that night she protected our family. I didn't know exactly what she meant or what she faced. I just know that since then she has never been the same. Sometimes I wonder if what they did to her went away or if it just learned to hide. I don't know if what we experienced was witchcraft suggestion or something we don't understand. What I know is it was real. I experienced it. I saw it. I lived it. And even today, sometimes I still hear in my head the same voice of the lady saying, "My skinny girl is going to take care of you." Hello, my name is Jaime and I am 30 years old. I'm from Colombia. I was born in a small city, but I've been living in Bogota for 13 years. I've listened to night stories since the pandemic and have replayed them many times, usually to fall asleep or while traveling. Precisely. The story I'm going to tell happened on the road. I like to travel by motorcycle, and in recent years I usually only do it at night since during the day I have remote work. This year I've gone several times to Bucaramanga, a city that's about 10 hours away by road from Bogota. Of course, I don't make the whole trip in one night. I usually rest in some small town. I work from there during the day and continue the journey at night. Once I decided to travel in the afternoon from Bucaramanga to Bogota because I needed to arrive that same day. I left around 1 in the afternoon. The whole trip went well. I stopped a couple of times to rest and have something to drink. Around 7 in the evening, it started raining really hard, but I didn't stop. I was wearing a good raincoat, and I'm used to driving in any weather condition. Son. Suddenly, I heard my dad's voice calling me son, just like he always does. My dad is alive and lives in my hometown almost 12 hours away from where I was at that moment. But I heard him clearly, as if he were right beside me. By reflex, I turned my head, as if expecting to see him sitting behind me as a passenger on the motorcycle. Even though I heard the voice very clearly, it was as if it came from inside my head, not mixed with the sound of the wind or the rain. Clear, distinct. I wasn't scared. I thought I had imagined it, maybe because I was tired. I kept going, thinking I'd stop further ahead to rest. However, a few minutes later, I heard it again very clearly. Hijo. It was his voice, his tone. This time I really got uneasy. I pulled over a bit and tried to call him, but my cell phone had no signal. I was in the middle of nowhere. I decided to keep driving. A few minutes later, it happened again. I couldn't ignore it anymore. I'm skeptical about everything related to the paranormal, energies, and that kind of stuff. I tend to be very rational. Even so, I couldn't help but feel uneasy. I was already very tired, and I thought it wasn't wise to keep driving at night, in the rain, on a narrow winding road in the middle of the mountains with a lot of semi-truck traffic. A little further ahead, I saw a roadside hotel and decided to stay there, no matter how much of a hurry I was in. I preferred to arrive late and alive rather than risk my safety. At the hotel, there was hardly any signal, not for internet or phone calls. It was very intermittent. Even so, I managed to get in touch with my dad to confirm that I was okay. The next day, I got up early to continue the journey. A few kilometers ahead, I found traces of an accident. A lot of broken glass, like from headlights, scattered on the asphalt. Skid marks, and the mark of a large vehicle in the ravine beside the road. Everything seemed very recent. When I got home, I looked for information about the accident. A local news outlet had reported it minutes after I entered the roadside hotel. 2 motorcyclists had died in the accident. I don't know if my dad's voice was a warning to protect me from that accident, or if it was all just a result of exhaustion and coincidence. A few days later, I told him what happened to me. He told me that afternoon he had been thinking about me a lot, with a strange feeling about me that he couldn't explain. He was surprised when he got my call and felt relieved to know that I was okay. I know it's not a scary story or necessarily paranormal. It's possible that it was all just a coincidence. Even so, It's an experience that still catches my attention because of the way things happened. I'd like to hear the community's thoughts. Have you had similar experiences? I have several unsettling stories, especially on the road. I don't interpret them as paranormal experiences since, as I said, I'm a skeptic. However, when I share them with my family or close friends, they do see them as ghost stories. It surprised her. If you publish this one, I promise to tell the rest. Thank you very much for reading me. Have a very good night.